Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. What did I just watch? What did I just hear? Now look, I've been very reluctant to give Bill Maher full credit. I always give him credit with a little asterisk. I give him partial credit with a little bit of a disclaimer. Now, you know, I don't agree with everything Bill Maher says, but in this case, he's saying the right thing. At least he's being honest. That's usually how I frame it. But honestly, folks, Bill Maher might be getting the whole red pill. He might be seriously waking up here. I mean, it feels as though Bill Maher's almost having like a political evolution. I don't know if it's a Bill Maher political evolution or if it's just maybe he's been mischaracterized. Maybe Bill Maher isn't actually a Democrat or a liberal. Maybe Bill Maher is more of a libertarian. You know, most of his liberal stances are just kind of live and let live things. You know, nowadays it seems almost as if Bill Maher has more in common with Ron Paul than he does with your average Democrat or your average leftist. The guy is waking up, and that's just what happens, I guess, if you're honest. The reality is Bill Maher is more honest than any of these other late night TV hacks. He's willing to point out the obvious and to use basic common sense instead of just falling in with the liberal Hollywood mob. And guess what, friends? Bill Maher literally just said on Dave Rubin's podcast, I believe it's his podcast, that he's considering moving to Florida if California Governor Gavin Newsom moves forward with more mandates. That is a big admission. I mean, could you imagine perceived left-wing ally and champion Bill Maher joining Joe Rogan and everybody else who's left California, leaving Hollywood and moving to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or wherever he goes? I mean, that would be huge. A loyal left-wing political thought leader fleeing a Democrat stronghold and Democrat government takes this whole California exodus thing to the next level. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, take a look at this clip from Rumble. Bill Maher stuns, says he will move to DeSantis' Florida if California does this.
If California says, I have to take shots, and DeSantis says, I don't, hello, Florida. That's what I'll say about DeSantis.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude. He really is. And he doesn't care whether you smoke weed, and he doesn't care who you marry. He doesn't.
But to sound like the voiceover at a movie that's coming out soon, shit just got real. But like for me, personally, really, shit just got real with that.
Yeah.
And that's in my mind.
Dude, I left this place because of it.
It's a phenomenon that continues to grow, and it's not slowing down. I mean, let's not forget that Governor Gavin Newsom ad where he essentially begged people not to move to Florida. Well, it seems as though it didn't exactly work, even with Democrat Party loyals, as now even Bill Maher is looking at the greener pastures of Florida and saying, you know what? Maybe people aren't crazy. Maybe there's something to it. I really think Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot. I think they are seriously hurting themselves in terms of the long-term view. You know, in response to all the pain and suffering, in response to all of the issues, in response to all of their failures, they're doubling down. They continue to double down, refuse to cede any ground whatsoever. And I think what we're starting to see is a mass awakening. People are waking up saying, whoa, these liberal policies are just not working. They're not working for me. They're not working for my family anymore. There was actually a stunning poll that came out of Australia recently. Australia being a relatively left-wing place, I mean center-left is probably a good way to describe it, where the majority of people surveyed preferred spending cuts in respect to tax hikes. It may seem like something relatively small, but that's certainly a wake-up call to me. It's a trend moving away from the nanny state, big government, and left-wing politics and ideology in general. Left-wing leaders like Governor Gavin Newsom are falling out of favor and quick, and we're seeing this start to happen in many Democrat strongholds. We recently spoke about how Republican gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin in the state of New York is slowly starting to creep up on Kathy Hochul. I also recently covered what's happening in left-wing Oregon, how a Republican candidate is on track to possibly win the state. Who would have thought that deep blue Oregon would elect a Republican governor, but it might actually happen. And this mass exodus and the mass wake-up call, I guess you could call it, is all connected. It feels like the demise of left-wing leadership. People are sick of it. I mean, just look at what California Governor Gavin Newsom is doing. We're seeing an oil crisis and an inflation crisis. California's inflation relief payments start going out on Friday. California's government is tackling inflation caused by stimulus with more stimulus. this. It seems almost like a vote-grabbing tool right before the elections, and then right after the elections, Gavin Newsom's stealth tax increase. The state quietly raises the marginal income tax to 14.4% in 2024. During an affordability crisis, they're increasing taxes and pushing out more stimulus. Democrats have completely lost the plot. Bill Maher riled up is that they're still talking mandates. This late in 2022, after everything we learned, they're still talking mandates. People are fed up, and rightfully so. And that's why we keep seeing these headlines. Ken Griffin pulling Citadel out of Chicago, making good on threats the richest man in Illinois said he is taking his companies to Miami. Why Boeing and Caterpillar are leaving Illinois. Billionaire investor Carl Icahn to leave New York for Florida. The rich and the wealthy are leaving. Then you see headlines like this from the New York Times. Some New Yorkers don't want the super rich to return. Sure, the tax revenue is nice, but keep coping, leftoids. They're pushing the investor class away, they're pushing jobs away, they're pushing tax revenue away. With their horrible policies, their anti-capitalist stances, and their eat the rich activism. It's not going to end well for you. What they don't seem to realize is that your fancy environmental policies and your fancy social welfare policies don't exist without the rich. I mean, take a look at Detroit, Michigan. It used to be the richest city in America, with a population in the city center of over 2 million if I'm not mistaken. Over the last however many decades, as industry started to die and leave Detroit, the city has died with it. Only a little bit over 600,000 people remain in downtown Detroit. Some places in the surrounding suburbs look like third world war zones. You cannot survive without capitalism, you can't survive without jobs, job creators, pouring in tax dollars to pay for everything. Once again, another example of leftoids shooting themselves in the foot. They don't seem to understand that California, of course, has been an economic powerhouse, but California is not entitled to it. And the more they push jobs out, the more they push people like Elon Musk and other jobs creators out, the worse it's going to get for them. What we're currently seeing now is an absolute explosion in places like Miami, Austin, Texas, and many other metropolitan areas in Texas. And slowly but surely, as we see this continue, as we see the trend continue, Republican states and Republican cities that are friendly to business, low tax environments, and that are very importantly after 2020 pro-freedom, are absolutely booming. Meanwhile, Democrat cities based on Democrat leadership are in decline, and I think this whole thing is connected. Maybe it's taking more time than you might like, but I truly believe this is all part of our shift into a new conservative era. The left has overstayed their welcome, they've abused and used their voters, they refuse to come a little bit closer to the center, which is what I think is pushing so many people away, and we're seeing a mass political enlightenment period. People are finally waking up that government dependence isn't a good thing. It's not government reliance and government stimulus. Without any baggage, it comes with a whole lot of baggage, and unintended consequences are frankly very obvious intended consequences. And people are realizing that it's not just free money and stimulus, that you may be happy that you get a $1,500 to $2,000 check, whatever it is in the short term, but in the long term, you become significantly poorer and worse off in the end. I've noticed a trend of people waking up. California is used as the model of how not to govern these days. Lifelong Democrat voters and Democrat strongholds are considering voting for Republican governors for the first time in over 20 years. Traditionally, left-wing people are leaving California and considering voting Republican for the first time as well. Now we even have Bill Maher threatening to leave California and move to Florida, and it just all slowly piles onto itself and creates this image in my mind, this vision that we are headed towards a political enlightenment period, a conservative movement, a new conservative age, where people finally wake up and reject modern leftism. Maybe it's a fantasy, maybe I'm coping, maybe it's hopium, I don't know what it is, but it's just how I feel based on what I'm seeing. That's what I got for you guys for this one though. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.